I also am grateful for this invitation to join Sister Alessandra, who, as you have just seen, can make the driest economic issue just come alive. We want to share some of the work of the Health Task Force of the Vatican's COVID-19 Commission. And last September, I was honored to be asked to chair the health component of it. For all of us, the past 15 months have been difficult and in many cases deadly. None of us have ever dealt with anything like this. In fact, most of us probably thought our very sophisticated world was beyond the possibility of a pandemic. The COVID-19 Commission was the inspiration of Pope Francis and his profound understanding of the world. In his encyclical Fratelli Tutti, he opens with these words: "As I was writing this letter, the COVID-19 pandemic unexpectedly erupted, exposing our false securities. Aside from the different ways that various countries responded to the crisis, their inability to work together became quite evident. For all our hyperconnectivity, we witnessed a fragmentation that made it more difficult to resolve problems that affect us all. Anyone who thinks that the only lesson to be learned was the need to improve what we were already doing or to refine existing systems and regulations is denying reality." His first chapter in this encyclical was entitled "Dark Clouds Over a Closed World." In it, he points to the conflicts all over the world between and within nations, the fractured political systems in many countries, the tsunami of misinformation and hate in social media, the polarizations in nations, in churches, including our own, and in groups and families that is often so violent and damaging. The manipulation of so many, but especially the young. In this chapter, the Pope does indeed take us on a walk down misery lane. He does note the negative impact of this on all of us, but most especially on those who are very poor and vulnerable. His words are powerful, but it is hard to argue with them. However, Pope Francis is ever the Pope of hope. So true to form, he says, "I invite everyone to renewed hope." For hope speaks to us of something deeply rooted in every human heart, independently of our circumstances and historical conditioning. Hope speaks to us of a thirst, an aspiration, a longing for a life of fulfillment, a desire to achieve great things, things that fill our heart and lift our spirit to lofty realities like truth, goodness and beauty, justice and love. Hope is bold. It can look beyond personal convenience, the petty securities and compensations which limit our horizon. It can open us up to grand ideals that make life more beautiful and worthwhile. Let us continue then to advance along the path of hope. So, in an effort to help us advance along the paths of hope, he established the COVID Commission. It aspires to work, towards solving this global problem as a global family. The Pope wanted his commission to recognize what he said at the beginning of his encyclical, that thinking just improving what we were already doing and or refining existing systems and regulations, that would create success was denying reality. His 4 task forces in the commission on the economy, ecology, security, and health recognized that pre-pandemic, these areas of our world were struggling and were especially negatively impacting persons living in poverty or other vulnerable situations, such as war-torn countries, migrants, trafficked persons, and that these people were being more profoundly hurt and would have a greater challenge to recover post-pandemic. Therefore, the Pope wished his commission to look at a broad spectrum of areas that had to be improved, not just health, in order to create a more caring and just world. The Health Task Force worked to understand what were the most valuable contributions the church could make. That meant extensive participation and cooperation with so many other groups working on this issue: scientists, health caregivers, pharmaceutical companies, the United Nations, the WHO, national and multinational governing bodies, NGOs, foundations, as well as the usual partners within our church. Finding ways to cooperate to make initiatives more viable and successful was a major goal. But also, we wanted to assure that the voices of the vulnerable are in the conversation and to challenge focusing only on national self-interest. There are so many issues that are negatively impacted by COVID, but for the task force, we determined that our two initial major goals were: first, equitable distribution of vaccines and treatments, and second, reducing the resistance to taking the vaccine. We've tried to laser focus on these two areas. As we began, there were no approved vaccines, so our focus was on advocacy for setting a goal of equitable distribution when we got a vaccine, and advocacy for developing the systems to facilitate delivering it and acceptance of it. One of the strongest messages we got as we worked with other groups was how important the voice of the church was, especially Pope Francis. This was true in international advocacy efforts, all the way down to convincing individuals in the most poverty-stricken villages to take the vaccine. The WHO and other world leaders in governments and foundations developed a plan before vaccines were developed and approved. It is known as COVAX. It is a place for donations of vaccines and or money from wealthier nations, individuals, and foundations for those countries who cannot pay for vaccines. It has had considerable success, but not anywhere near enough yet. Also, to be successful, it has to be convinced that countries have the capacity to operate safe and ethical vaccine distribution centers once they get the vaccine. The concept is excellent and has already done much good, but it is still not adequate to meet the needs. Recently, the challenges to the J&J and AstraZeneca vaccines have added to the issues we have had to deal with, as these two vaccines are the easiest to distribute and only require one shot. We are hopeful of progress in this area, and the task force will continue to advocate for more donations and also work to help in implementing safe and equitable vaccine distribution programs in countries. With the help of partners, we have been working with various groups in different countries. We have put a special focus on sisters and other Catholic organizations who daily serve people who live in poverty and who have their trust. I personally believe that in many countries, this group is our best hope for safe and fair distribution of vaccines, as well as the best tool for convincing people of the safety and importance of taking the vaccines. Many in our church can play important roles in this fight to end the pandemic. One key thing the task force has done to assist everyone in this is to create a resource kit in multiple languages that will be useful to those in many roles in our church today. This resource kit is made up of several parts and is available now on the website of the COVID-19 Commission. The first part of it is a clear explanation of the church's teaching on vaccines. For years, we have known that most vaccines are made and or tested using stem cells grown in a laboratory that originated from a fetus aborted over 40 years ago. Almost all of us have had a vaccine made in this way. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccines were not made in this way, but they were tested using these cells. The J&J and AstraZeneca were made and tested using these cells. The church has decades of theology and ethical teachings asking that better ways of testing and producing vaccines should be a goal, but that taking these vaccines or administering them to children is not participating or cooperating with the evil of abortion. In spite of this, a number of voices immediately started refusing to take the vaccines that had been made and or tested this way. Some of them were bishops in various dioceses, as well as priests and other teachers of the faith. Several dicasteries have again clarified the consistent teaching of the church. Pope Francis has been very clear that it is a moral responsibility to take the vaccines to protect oneself, one's family, and one's community from this deadly disease. The Pontifical Academy of Life and the Health Task Force of the COVID Commission jointly wrote an article expanding this information. All of this is contained in the first part of the resource kit so that priests and other teachers of the faith, as well as healthcare people, have well-documented information on this challenging issue. Next, in the resource kit, we created a section on clinical and ethical issues regarding COVID-19 and vaccines. It is in a question and answer format designed to help priests, sisters, other staff members in leadership roles in our church. They can be in parishes, schools, clinics, social service centers. These are very busy people, and they do not have time to research all the issues that come up. So we have carefully combined not only the clinical information from reputable sources, but the theological information. Another section contains homilies and other paragraphs that can be used in church bulletins, on church websites, in social media postings to help the church spread the information on vaccines and on the importance of taking them to prevent this deadly disease. We also have a section that I think is especially valuable. It is called A Family Guide to COVID-19 and Vaccines. It is also in a question and answer format and has pictures of children and families from every continent in the world. It, in very simple language, answers questions and provides information, not only on what the disease is, but on who it affects, recommendations for preventing it, and the importance and safety of vaccines. It does so with good clinical information, as well as looking at it through a Catholic lens, often using the words of Pope Francis. I can tell you that many scientists have said to me that you could put the best scientist or the most senior government official in a room, and their voice would be less effective than the voice of people who have been caring for others before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and will be there after the pandemic. These are often the church and its organization. This gives us a privileged place and the responsibility to help people understand from voices they trust what they need to do to protect themselves and their families. We will be working with many groups to translate this family guide into local dialects when they think that would be helpful. Other things in the resource kit include sources of information that they can continually go to, to get updates, to clarify the massive amount of misinformation that is out there. We hope that using the resource kit will lead people to stay connected with the Commission's website so that as advances, setbacks, and resources are identified, we can make them available quickly. The resource kit is on the COVID Commission's website, and it is available in English, Spanish, Italian, French, German, and Portuguese. We will soon be adding Polish and Tagalog in a few days. We can send you the links, or you can just go right on the web and for the COVID Commission. We're working with many partners, including the Hilton Foundation for Sisters, to try to utilize the treasure that women's communities are for so many living in poverty and in conditions not worthy of their dignity as human beings, to be certain that in the fight to end this pandemic, their needs are not the last to be addressed. The task force has worked, as Ambassador knows, with the diplomats accredited to the Holy See and other government agencies, in addition to the WHO and some NGOs, to utilize the vast network in many impoverished countries of sisters, priests, and Catholic lay organizations who have the trust of people to promote vaccination, as well as to actually do the vaccinations in many of their facilities. Just yesterday, I was on a conference call with one of the countries of Africa, where their vaccination resistance is up to 80%. We will never solve this, and they're not an aberration. Many people will tell you that they still don't trust the vaccines, and they don't trust many of the organizations in their country that would be bringing them the vaccines. We now have choices in vaccines, as well as some good scientific evidence of efficacy and safety. We still have a high percentage of people who have refused to take the vaccine for many reasons. It is imperative that we help them and find reliable options for assuring they are getting good and safe vaccines and understanding the importance of getting them. Often, frankly, there are exceptionally good reasons for their skepticism. Helping to assure a reliable infrastructure and combating counterfeit and fraudulent vaccines is a critical step. Working closely with groups who have the trust of local people because of their history with them is essential. The Holy Father's encyclical Fratelli Tutti is a treasure trove of the incredible challenges our world faces in so many areas, but also the affirmation of our ability to rise to these challenges, and his emphasis on the responsibility of religions to play a major role in this. He says toward the end of his encyclical, "From our faith experience and from the wisdom accumulated over centuries, but also from lessons learned from our many weaknesses and failures, we, the believers of different religions, know that our witness to God benefits our societies. The effort to seek God with a sincere heart, provided it is never sullied by ideological or self-serving aims, helps us to recognize one another as traveling companions, truly brothers and sisters. For these reasons, the Church, while respecting the autonomy of political life, does not restrict tradition to the private sphere. On the contrary, she cannot and must not remain on the sidelines in the building of a better world, or fail to awaken the spiritual energy that can contribute to the betterment of society. Both Sister Alessandra and I hope that this commission can play an important role in empowering women and men to help solve this global problem as a global family. Thank you very much.